Thank you, Srinidhi. Are you able to hear me? Yes. Okay. So, good evening, good night, good morning, good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much, Silray team, for having me here. And one of my favorite topics, empathy. And it was, the paper presentation that was done just before and what Anchal shared in the end, it kind of matched up with what we are going to be discussing today, the empathy. And one of the questions she had asked to Smita and Varshit was, how can non-educators be empathetic, or give that space to people who are in that education space trying to do something, or that was a very pertinent question. And I think that sets the whole platform for today's discussion. So thank you so much, and I'm looking forward to you know in knowing from our panelists what they think about empathy. How do we foster it? What is the importance of it in this education space that we are talking about? And so I'm going to just start right away. So my first question would be to all the panelists, is that, what according to you is empathy? Because this is a word that is being thrown around a lot, and it has come, even more with the COVID thing. And we are all talking about empathetic environment, empathetic workplace. What does that really mean, for you? So I'm curious to understand personally, what does this word empathy mean for you? What does it look like for you? What does it sound like for you? And also, what is it that makes it so important right now that we are talking about this, that we are wanting to have conversations around it? So I would like to start with Niyata. Niyata, would you like to share?
Yeah. Hi, Shubha. Hi, everybody else. It's great to be here on this platform to talk about something which is I'm really very passionate about. For me, empathy is, everybody, it's a kind of a cliche to say that put yourself in somebody else's shoes, but how exactly do we do that? It's like Dr. Brené Brown says that, you see somebody in a deep hole and you're still outside there looking down on them, not really sharing in their pain. And that's kind of a sympathetic approach. You see, yes, you feel sorry for them, but you're really not there for them. But if you're an empathetic person, you're actually climbing down into that hole and making yourself vulnerable to their pain and listening to them. And, it's not about offering solutions. It is just to show that, yes, you're there to listen. And if there is any way you can help, you're there. It's not about it's not about providing a solution at first, because we know that most people in pain, they are not looking for solutions. They are just looking for some kind of understanding. They are looking for somebody who's emotionally available. So for me, empathy, I would say, is being emotionally available. And then to the second part of your question, about why we are having these conversations in this, it's not exactly post-pandemic, but yes, we've been through the worst of it, I hope. All of us were locked down, we were alone, we were cut off from our uh, loved ones, and online working has been very difficult and it's been very intensive. Some of us have been working like 28 hours in a day, if that is possible. And it really, let me colloquially to say, it really messed up with a lot of people's mental health, because there were no boundaries. And so now, at some point of time, all organizations started realizing that there was a real burnout, and we really need to support our people in getting through this. And not just colleagues, it's also the children. The children were burnt out. Dr. Olainka said that there was Zoom fatigue. So, not to take up all the time, but basically we understand that there has to be a lot of support for each other amongst us as a community. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Niyata. It reminds me of something I read that day. It says, I think Henry David said that could a greater miracle take place than for us to look at each other's eyes for an instant. So I think that kind of sums up a lot about what we are talking about, what you just shared, in terms of being that empathy part. Yeah, Shweta, would you like to share what it means for you?
A very, very good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. I'm Shweta Desiraju, and I'm extremely honored to be here to talk about empathy. And I'm especially stoked because of the way Splendor is trying to connect empathy and education. Because educators, they have the fortune to not only contribute to the intellectual development of children, but also to the social development and emotional development of children. When we talk about empathy and educators, it is extremely important for educators to be empathetic because when an educator, when a teacher, a lecturer, or a professor is being empathetic in a classroom, it is so important for the students. It creates a safe space and a nurturing environment for the students because when we talk about a school, or let's say when we take a classroom, we have students coming in from different backgrounds. We have students coming in from various cultural backgrounds, ethnic backgrounds, socio-economic backgrounds, and they come from different situations happening in their own houses. So when they come to school, when they come to a class, and if they see their teacher or their educator creating a safe and a nurturing environment for them with empathy, they create that space for each other, and they don't just do it in the classroom, but the best thing about students is that they take it to the community outside, they take it to the society. So when an educator is being empathetic, the educator is not only creating a safe space for the students, but the educator is building a very strong community through empathy. And when these students see a classroom being led with empathy, they grow up to become leaders. They grow up to become strong leaders who can lead teams with empathy. They try to understand the people they are leading. They try to be empathetic towards the people they are leading, and together it fosters empathy all around, and it creates strong communities. So I believe that empathy is all the more important, and it's an extremely powerful tool when we talk about education.
Thank you, Shweta. And it also comes across in your voice how strongly you believe
Yes.
in this whole concept and how you want to do something in that area. Thank you so much. Yeah, Sujata, you're on. What does it mean for you?
Thank you. Namaste, everybody. Honored to be here. Yes, I am working mainly with very young children under the age of 6. 1 to 6 year olds is that I work with. And I also obviously work with the teachers in the classroom as well as parents who are raising these children. So for me, when I was invited to this panel discussion about fostering empathy, I was again reflecting on what does empathy mean to me. So for me, empathy is being non-judgmental, because I see in many classrooms, children are being labeled as a trouble child, oh, he is a problematic child or trouble child, and it's so hard. And that is something that I have heard a lot. So it's, instead of labeling a child as a troubled child, teachers need the training to understand what could be the reason behind the challenging behavior that the child is exhibiting. What is the child's challenge in demonstrating the feelings that he is going through, expressing the feelings that the child is going through, that emotions, and how to teach that child to express it in a socially acceptable manner, those kind of things. Teachers need training, and as well as parents need counseling and support. And this topic is so important at this time. After the pandemic, many families had to keep the children at home for more than a year. And young children, I'm talking about very young children, like from birth to 5 years, they are so energetic and they want to socialize, and they need people to talk to them and acknowledge them and validate their feelings and everything. But poor children had to be cooped up inside the four walls of their house, and with parents who are struggling to balance working from home and raising these children, taking care of their needs. And it was very challenging time during the pandemic. And we see that ripples in children as well. They are emotionally affected. Many children are speech delayed. Young children lost that crucial of verbal development. So this is the time to be more empathetic to the families and children, and I see that on a daily basis in my classrooms.
Thank you, Sujata. What comes out to me across of what all the three of you shared is that, empathy just goes beyond even just, just saying, okay, walk in somebody else's shoes. It goes beyond that. It's basically saying that, we need to see each other as more, as human beings, and be there for each other in the path that we are walking. How can we understand what's going on with the other person and be there, give our full presence, to each other, whether it is a child or whether it is an adult. So I'm just curious to know from the audience out here, what came out for you when you heard our three speakers talk about empathy in terms of in relation to education or in relation to children. What came out for you? So maybe you could just give us some pointers and then we can take it forward. We could wait for a few more. Yeah. Yeah, true. It is very important. We do accept that, but we find it challenging to implement it. Yes, be available, understanding, being emotionally present, and take action to support. The action is also required as a follow-up. Yeah, non-judgmental presence with their feelings. Yeah, so we are kind of agreeing to what even the speakers said, that, empathy is something that we need to look at. We need to have more conversations about it. And I think we need to go beyond those conversations to be able to develop that skill to implement it, not just with others, but even with ourselves. I think many of us miss out being empathetic towards ourselves, and we are more focused on giving empathy to others, and then we are burnt out. And that is when it goes downhill. So I think it is caregivers, parents, educators, um, all of us need that empathy, need to be understood, need to be seen, and need to be cared for. Thank you so much for the inputs. So we move on to the next question, which is as important. It is about the learning. So I was reading a book. I didn't read it completely, but it was very interesting what caught my eye. It's a book called Range by David Epstein. I don't know if you guys have heard. So he talks about learning environments. So he talks about kind and wicked. So we are talking about a learning environment which is kind. So I look at it as an empathetic environment. So if the learning environment, the way we look at learning environment nowadays is, put everybody in a room and tuck, 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 learn. But are they really learning, or is that learning, can we have an alternative way of learning? And how does having an empathetic environment where you are working from that understanding for children, how does it affect the learning outcomes? Does it affect, and how does it affect? So, Niyata, you're on.
Yes, the learning environment. Okay, what is a learning environment? What is a school? Or what is the learning space you're going into? It's not just, education is not about just purveying of knowledge. Life skills, important life skills are learned in schools, which contribute to the molding of students into resilient, adaptable, and innovative problem solvers with global citizenship qualities, because it's now practically a global village. So it's very important to take any learning that happens in the classroom out of the four walls context. And what does empathy have to do with it? Empathy has everything to do with it. First of all, I feel there are two major reasons empathy is required especially in an educational space. When all the adults we are all caregivers. When we work in schools or institutions of learning, we are all caregivers. So we have young minds who are looking to us as role models. When they see all the people in the community working empathetically with each other, there is a lot of synergy. And that's a great lesson. That's a great lesson for them to take, that this kind of approach is what actually makes for a good collaborative working space. And the outcomes are high outcomes are achieved. And again, in the classroom, how does empathy help? You know where each child comes. It doesn't have to be like you're getting personal with them, but it does help to understand the feelings of each child. Like, for example, there was a child in the class who, like Sujata said, people tend to label children. So she's slow. She doesn't like to get started on work. So for me, it was that when I enter the class, go straight to that child, not not really like everybody knows that one is doing that, but yes, the child feels very cherished, and you say that, oh, you started here, and you've got such a beautiful handwriting. And yes, are you saying my handwriting is beautiful? I said, yes, of course your handwriting is beautiful. When you start to write, you really write beautifully. She says, oh, nobody ever told me that. And that changed what she did. She started looking at herself in a different way. So that's empathy for you. It's just a small example of empathy. Every single child in your class has a different background. Mr. Balasundaram talked about differentiation. Differentiation cannot be done if you don't have that empathy. That you are not looking at children with that lens of empathy. So what does empathy do to the child? It gives the child a sense of belonging, a confidence, and feeling supported. So, and for me, I want to go back to a science lesson, a fire triangle. In order to make fire, there are three things you need. You need a supporter of combustion, that's the fuel. You need a fuel, you need a supporter of combustion, which is oxygen, and you need the right temperature. Now, when you think about objects that burn, that give light, let us look at a candle or a lamp. You have a candle is never just a wick or the wax. These two things, if you just light them, they would just burn so quickly, and there is nothing left. There is no sustained light. But when the wick and the wax together, they work. The light, it burns in a sustained manner, So for me, learning is like that. You are teaching in class without empathy, or you're just all empathy and there's nothing else going on in the classroom, there's hardly going to be any learning. But when solid pedagogical practices are combined with an empathetic approach, I think there is a lot of sustained learning, and learning outcomes definitely improve. So that's my take on empathy in the education space. Thank you.
Thank you, Niyata. Sujata, what you are also in the same space working with children of the younger age. So what comes up for you when Niyata is sharing about the empathetic environment?
Yeah. So when we talk about empathetic environment for young children, what I'm reflecting on is like children with behavioral challenges. How do we support them in the environment of the classroom, right? So one thing is, of course, we have to start with the teacher who is educated and who is able to recognize the child's challenge and able to support that child emotionally. And another thing is about supporting the child. Sometimes I'm talking about young children who may not be able to communicate. So giving them tools to communicate, like, okay, visual tools, having a visual routine up for the child, and having visual expectations for classroom behavior for the child, and also conflict management tools, like when the child is having a conflict with another child or teacher or parent or whatever is going on with the child that day. Child is clueless about talking about expressing it because that child doesn't have the language skill to express. So we have to give them visual tools, like we in our classrooms have emotion chart or pictures attached to a popsicle stick. So the child can pick up and show, I'm sad or I'm angry. Instead of saying that, the child can just show us that, okay, this is how I'm feeling and I need your help. And we assure the child that we are there for you. We just want to know how you're feeling, and then we can help you, instead of throwing tantrum or breaking toys and throwing things around. And this is a better way to communicate to us if you don't have the language. So we support in different ways. And we also give training to the teachers in supporting children, because we are again working with very young children with limited language skills. So that is one way we address that.
So it does help in terms of the learning outcomes when children are learning. When you use all these tools, it helps them to express and also have the safe environment where. So do you see that affecting the learning process also when they, you see some difference in terms of their learning also?
Absolutely. In most cases, there are exceptions who need better intervention from experts in the behavioral therapy and all that. But in most children, we have seen tremendous effect when they feel supported, when their feeling is validated, and they see that, okay, help is there for me when I need. And that boosts their confidence, and that brings that security for the child, and children thrive in such an environment. The best out of them come out.
Thank you, Sujata. So coming to you, Shweta, you work in the space of, where children are diagnosed with neurodevelopmental disorders. So if there is an empathetic environment, does it affect, how does it help? How does it impact their learning process?
So when we talk about the field of neurodevelopmental disorders, there is this very famous saying, and this is something that I practice in our clinic as well. It goes like, if you meet one child with autism, you are only meeting one child with autism, because it affects every child differently. And this is where empathy plays a key role, because as a therapist, if I'm treating all my children who are diagnosed with ASD or ADHD in the same way, then it means I'm doing injustice to them, because each child is different. So it starts by understanding the child genuinely. So it is important for us, it is important for all the caregivers to genuinely try to understand the child first, to put in efforts to actually understand how the child is feeling, what the child is lacking, what the child's strengths are. That is something that we often forget. We have to understand the strengths of the child as well. So when we try to understand that each child is unique and each child has their own individual personality, that is when we are trying to be empathetic towards them. And the first step in being empathetic towards a child, being empathetic towards any person, is genuinely trying to understand the person. So when you try to understand the child, you try to develop a plan, a treatment plan, or a learning procedure, or a class schedule for the child that helps that particular child. So you see the child flourishing in so many ways than what is expected. So I think I personally strongly believe that our first step should always be to understand each person genuinely, to put in efforts to try to see what the person is going through, and only then we will be able to empathize with them. We will then be able to create safe spaces for these children, and we will see them flourish.
Thank you, Shweta. That was very insightful. Uh, when we are talking about all this, one thing that's coming up is that we are focused a lot on children, giving them the space, being empathetic. Now I come to the adults, right? So one thing what you said was learning to be understanding of others. The issue that I see even when I'm working with people, the issue I see is that as adults or when we were children, we have not received empathy. We have received criticism, we have received extreme praise, or it has been external, where everything external affects our being. So when we have certain feelings as we are growing up, it has been suppressed, or it has been ignored, or it has not been seen. We have not been seen. Now we come to a space where we are working with children. So what are your thoughts on, as an adult, when I have not received empathy, how do I give empathy? So what is it that we could do differently to start working in that space, you know? Or, what are your thoughts around it, that how do we build that community where adults are aware of what empathy is, they are receiving it, and then they are able to give it with more ease and comfort. Otherwise it is something like an effort. I hear a lot of, when I work with parents, they say, "Arey yaar, it's so much of an effort." Like somebody said, "I can't be consistent. I mean, in one situation I may give empathy and the other I lose it." And then the child says, "You know what, you're not consistent, so I'm not receiving what I want to receive." So how do we work in that space? What is it that you think that we can do as adults, or even as a society, as a community? What are the things that we can do to develop that, empathetic culture or environment around us? Anybody can share.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you for that question, Shubha. I think when working with, yes, we are working with children, like you said, but then it's a body of adults who are taking care of young children, and it is like, it's a kind of a tripod where the school and the home work together for the betterment or for the growth of the child. So, and in the school, we have so many different care, people who are attending to the children, who academic and support staff, the admin staff, everybody. So it is important that we all need to work with each other, and it takes. It's like somebody said, it's easy and not as difficult as it looks. If you just decide you must do it. So the thing is that if you, anything which happens, if you step back and look at it, look at the person or look at the circumstances which led to that happening, and you try to understand and not make others feel threatened, so that they know that you're not judging them. It's very important. You, it's you take yourself out of the situation, set aside your own reaction, and then if when you have to give feedback, you can say that, instead of saying that you did this in a wrong way, say that I think that if you had done it this way, you might have had a better outcome. And you give, you speak less and you listen more. So they know that you are a safe person, that who they can talk to. And most of the time it is communication. Once they know that they can say something, they're also open to what you might be able to offer as a solution. But we can't jump into the fix-it mode. First of all, you need to get the communication right, and they know that you are a person to be trusted. So if everybody in the community is able to behave in that fashion, I think empathy is a skill which can be learned. It's, as you said, we did not grow up with a lot of empathy. Our parents just brought us up, and so, but we cannot do that, because we know the benefits of empathy. And I think by creating more and more instances where you show empathy to people, empathy can be taught. You can encourage, you can be a role model for people to, practice empathetic approaches with everybody. And then, I think it's very important to allow people to know that reaction is never a good thing. You need to respond to the situation. So that has been working for me a lot. And I keep, when it comes to especially labeling children, I always take the back seat. I say, no, it's not a label that we want here. We want to see what is actually going on, and we want to address that. Thank you.
Thank you, Neta. What I'm hearing you say is mindful language, maybe a bit of pause in when we are getting into the space of reaction, and that could help, bring that shift that we are looking at in terms of creating that environment which is more compassionate and understanding of each other. Thank you so much. Yeah, Shweta, Sujata.
Yes, I couldn't agree more with what Niyata has said. It makes 100% sense. To add on to this, it is actually very inspiring that people who have not received empathy or understanding or safe spaces while growing up are now determined to create those spaces for the children of tomorrow. It is absolutely inspiring. And this is exactly where the concept of self compassion comes into place. So, self compassion is extending the compassion that we always give to others inwards. So, it is as simple as if you see somebody else going through a tough time, or if you see somebody else failing, we try to be very compassionate towards them. We try to be very understanding. We give them very kind words. But when it comes to us, we don't tend to be so kind to ourselves. So if we start by being so kind to ourselves, by being compassionate towards ourselves, then we do not burn out, and it is easier for us then to give compassion to others, to give the empathy to the children of tomorrow. So I believe that the key is self compassion.
Absolutely. And I think many of us will agree that that's the most challenging thing to do. Yeah, thank you, Shweta. Yeah, Sujata, anything you would like to add?
Something small, like when I mean, I feel like, now in the news, present situation, generation, there is a need for empathy to be part of the curriculum. We, at least I'm from the older generation here. I deal with the young parents and very young children. So compared to them, I had the experience of living in a joint family, or having opportunity to interact with many cousins and relatives. But now we are more nuclear families, and children are becoming more and more self-centered. They are losing the power to think about others, which is empathy, because there is no opportunity, very less opportunity in their families. So it is becoming more and more important to make it part of the curriculum in preschools, because that is a tender age where we can inculcate these values. As an early childhood educator, I'm being more and more mindful about that.
Thank you, Sujata. Thank you so much. I think what comes out very clearly is that we need to start seriously developing these skills, and we also need to learn how we can be kind to ourselves. And that's the place to start, like Shweta said. I completely agree with that. And it reminds me of what I read in one of the books, which prompted me to buy the book, was a book written by Valerie Kaur. And she says, "See no stranger." So she says, "You are a part of me I do not know yet." And I think with that, we will open it up for the audience to, ask any questions or share their thoughts on what is their takeaway from the session, or is there something coming up for them that they would like the panelists to give their perspectives. So please do share your questions and thoughts so that we know what is going on with you. Thank you so much. I can see a question by Fatima. As a residential school, how do you support adolescent teenage challenges empathetically? Are educators sufficiently equipped to handle this? So I think this is for you, Niyata.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. Thank you for that question. It's a beautiful question because it's something that we are doing day in and day out. We in my school, we consider ourselves as, it's not just the teachers who are educators. Everybody in the community is an educator. So we believe in every single person the students come into contact with should be able to relate to them in an empathetic fashion without being judgmental. And this is only possible when people understand, because it's, again, you people cannot give what they don't have. So it's very important for us to continuously train and train all the people in our community about how they relate with children. First of all, sometimes with some people it just has to be the transactional training, how you do it, and then they start thinking about why they are doing it. And with some other people you have to say why they are doing it, but as an organization we have to put down certain expectations from the people who are taking care of the children, that this is how we relate with the children. And then we support that. Around that we have a lot of trainings. We do a lot of trainings. We even have trainings every morning at 7:30 before school starts at 8. We have a Zoom meeting. All the staff is there and we all have a 5-minute training, 10-minute training, because we believe that you can't train too much on how to handle children. So something or the other is always there. And yes, as we these adolescents have always had a lot of challenges, but the present generation of adolescents or pre-adolescents they are a different generation. They are the Gen Z, Gen Alpha, who have everything, the world at their fingertips, and they have a lot of knowledge which they cannot make sense of. So they are constantly trying to experiment with different things. They're constantly thinking of so many different things to do, and constantly oh, why are there so many rules? Why are there so many restrictions? Why can't it be like this? Why can't it be like that? And we have to constantly keep reminding them that the world is not this is just a small cocoon you are in. Once you leave secondary school, you go out, there are going to be bigger challenges. So it's very important to be self-disciplined and understand why you do things and have a good sense of your own self-worth. So one thing we do in our school is we tell each and every child to be very mindful, ask themselves the question, who am I? From the time they come in at the age of 9 or 10, we teach them to ask themselves this question, who am I? So what defines you? What do you want to do? And how are you going to translate that into reality? So they constantly keep, introspecting on that. We ask them every year, they do vision boards. And, like we say, it is okay if your vision board is changing every term. What you want to do is changing, but at least you keep thinking about who you are and what you like to do. And we find that over the years, we find that student behavior has improved. They're engaging a lot more in conversing with the people who are around them. They are able to talk and they're able to confide. So I think, that all the training and all the training is really helping, and it is making more empathetic individuals out of everybody. And that is an approach which is really working with the teenagers.
Thank you, Niyata. I think the most powerful thing that you said, which was very, very, I think, powerful, was that you help them focus on themselves as to what they value and where they want to be. I think the more we are, aligned to what we value, and our actions are also aligned to what we value, automatically the whole system changes. The shift happens. Thank you so much for sharing that. There was one more question for Sujata.
Yeah, I think it's regarding the challenges of children
in being
fitting
included.
into
Yeah. Would you like to answer that, Sujata?
Absolutely, my pleasure. Because the reason why Vidyaram was started is, it started with that question. Okay, how can our children, who are the children of Indian immigrants in the United States, fit in better in the society with pride? When we say fit in, it's not about pretending to be a white child. It is also being proud of who you are, that feeling pride in one's own identity, right? So it is a very big issue in children growing up abroad, identity crisis. Like, they are confused about who they are, and they are sometimes ashamed of who they are, their skin colors and their heritage and their food and things like that. And there is a very funny term for Indian children growing up in America. It is ABCD. Most of you have heard that. It is the abbreviation for American Born Confused Desi. And it is, I cannot tell how true it is. One reflection I have is when my son was, he's 22 now, when he was a 6-year-old, we were in Philadelphia, and I used to pack Indian lunch to him for school, and his friends used to make fun of it. They used to ask him, why is it so yellow? It looks dirty and it smells, and things like that. And he used to feel very sad about it. And he used to come and tell me, Amma, just pack sandwiches for me because my friends are making fun of my food. And then I approached the teacher, and the teacher was very empathetic. I'm very thankful to her. She held a circle time session with children discussing about various cuisine and different countries and their food. And, that did help other children understand different families have different background, different food and things like that, because it was just an innocent remark. I don't think the other children intentionally wanted to make my child feel sad about his food, but it was an innocent remark, because children blurt out whatever comes in their mind. They don't have two face. So they thought, oh, it smells different. And so the word they used is it smells or it stings, or because it was an unpleasant smell for the other children, things like that. So, for children from different background, or children of immigrants growing up in United States, these kind of challenges are there. Starting from their skin color, their accent, sometimes if they came to the country later in their life, and sometimes their clothing, their religious belief, many things get ridiculed. And unless they are proud about what they are, what their roots are, and what their heritage is, it is very difficult for that child to fit in. And then it is very easy otherwise for a child to feel low about themselves, and that might affect the child in his entire or her entire life. So that is the reason why Vidyaram was started. Again, I started it for my own son, my third child, who was a 3-year-old when I started this. And I wanted him to be proud of his roots and heritage, and wanted to experience Indian festivals, and learn shlokas, and cherish or have a love for Indian food. And so everything is included in Vidyaramth. And the young children, to answer the specific question, the young children, for example, who are coming to Vidyaramth, I don't think they have a crisis at this point, because the younger the child is, they are judgmental. But as they grow older, it is very easy to have them, they will definitely face judgmental comments. But if they are brought up in a way that they feel very proud of their roots and heritage, it's less likely that they feel bad about themselves, and instead they feel proud, and they'll be able to talk, okay, yes, I come from so-and-so country, this is my food, and this is the way we dress up, and this is the temple we go to, whatever it is, the child will be proud about that. And that is a humble attempt through Vidyaramth that I'm trying to do.
Thank you, Sujata. Thank you so much for sharing that perspective.
Thank you.
Shweta, I will direct this question to you. So this is the last question we'll take out here. Anshul shares, and I think this is a concern that comes up, that if a child who has intrinsically developed, being empathetic or has the empathetic qualities. So there is this misnomer, or there is this misconception that if you are empathetic, then you can be taken for a ride, or you are soft. So empathy is related to softness. What do you think about it?
I think it is a wonderful question to begin with. And this is where we bring in the concept of helping children understand the difference between empathy and sympathy. Because when a child or when anybody is giving empathy to another person, the other person feels understood, the other person feels respected, and we are creating a safe space, which is extremely brave, which is extremely strong. So there is a lot of strength in empathy. But if we teach a child to show sympathy to another person instead of empathy, that is where the child could be taken for a ride, because the child is constantly showing sympathy, and the child grows up to be somebody who is easily vulnerable, or who is easily taken for a ride, because the child is constantly showing sympathy instead of empathy. So I think we can tackle this problem by helping our children understand the difference between being empathetic towards a person and just showing sympathy and not really caring for another person.
Thank you, Shweta. I completely agree, and I just want to add. So we say that empathy is basically compassion with firmness. So it is not about giving away your needs or putting your needs down. It's basically meeting your needs and the other person's needs too. So with that, I think I will conclude. Thank you so much, Niyata, Shweta, Sujata for taking out time and being part of this. Thank you, Silray, for giving us this opportunity. Really, really thankful and grateful. And I sincerely hope that this discussion has brought in some thought, some seeds into people to think about what empathy is, how can they foster it in their homes to start with themselves and with others. Thank you so much. Over to you, Srinidhi. Thank you.
Once again, I would like to thank all the panel members for brilliant